Good morning, gentlemen. Mal Evans and Graeme Peck, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. This project, this interview, what I call our little project, has been in the making for the past 5 years. So I thought I'd start today's interview with just putting it into context as to why this was so important. There were two drivers for this interview. One is that I joined Evans and Peck when I was one of the early graduates back in 2000, and Evans and Peck as an organisation looked after me so well that I felt that this was my way of saying thank you in capturing the Evans and Peck story. And the second reason is that I felt that as an organisation, Evans and Peck achieved so much. There were so many of my colleagues, so proud to have worked for an organisation like Evans and Peck, that I thought sharing that story with other people in our industry might help them understand a little bit about what made this organisation so special. And hopefully we can all learn from some of your learnings and some of your experiences in the industry. When you came together, what was driving you, in terms of the purpose for Evans and Peck, that you joined forces? Was there something in particular that was driving you for that organisation, what you wanted to achieve within the industry as well?
Well, I suppose it'd be fair to say we were both reasonably well known in the industry. I'd been president of the New South Wales branch of the AFCC for 4 or 5 years, so I was extremely well known on the contracting side and reasonably well known on the government side. Mal had experience with many groups and also was well known. And the two of us together decided that number one, as a partnership, we could generate more work than we could as individuals in a continuous way. If you're an individual, you're either working or you're looking for work.
Yes, I know the feeling.
If you're a partnership, there's always an opportunity for the business to be more or less continuous.
Yes.
And also we figured that the consulting services available to the construction industry at that time were less than good. Well, perhaps that's a better way to express it. Less than perfect. And we figured we could add quite a bit to the industry in that way. So we saw an opportunity to develop our business and our interests, and at the same time contribute something to the industry we've both spent a long time with.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yes, we'd been in the construction industry for quite a long time at this stage. We knew what construction was about, or we thought we did anyway. And that's the way it worked out. And we focused at the high end of the heavy construction industry. And that seemed to work. It seemed to be what the construction industry was needing. That's both from the contracting side and the owner's side.
And what about your vision for the business, Mal? Did you these days people talk about, I want to be a certain size, I want a certain turnover, and so forth in terms of goals. And in terms of your vision at the beginning, what did you think where this was going to go, where Evans and Peck was going to go?
I don't think we talked in that way at that time, and we were busy getting a business off the ground and trying to prove that business was going to go. You'd agree with that, Graeme?
Yeah, I think our focus always was to contribute to the industry, to make a reasonable living and to enjoy what we did. And as a result of the services we provided, we became very well known in the industry, and more and more people wanted to use our services. Yes. And that from that point on, it became a question of natural growth.
So in the early days, I guess you saw Evans and Peck as a construction management consultancy. Mal, what were the early services? What were the services that you were providing?
Our logo in the early days had construction management, and that's where Graeme and I started, because that's where our expertise was.
Yes.
And that just went on like that. So we did all the things that the construction industry does, like planning and programming, costing, estimating, claims. That was the scope of the work that we were covering at that stage.
Right.
I started when we were together with Darling Harbour, which was basically a planning job, which progressed into programming and contract documentation. So that was the early part for me.
Right. Mel, what I was just going to ask about just following on from what Graeme was talking about, there were certain, I guess, values and principles that you kind of, stood for in those days, and they might have not necessarily been written up on the wall, but it was something that even as a graduate, I very much was introduced to, because it was the way, it was the Evans and Peck way. Do you want to share a little bit about some of those principles and values of the business?
I think that most of the values we had were natural, weren't they? The business was done straightforwardly and honestly. Integrity was an important part of what we were talking about, and we were keen to keep the quality of the offerings to the clients as an important element of it. And I think that carried on through to the time you came.
Yes.
And I assume it's carried on ever since. The integrity, and I think Ian termed the thing as, call it as we see it. And that's what we did. If the client didn't like it, we'd help him to try and get over the problems that he saw with the answers we were giving him. We tried to keep that going through, certainly by the time we were there, Graeme.
Yeah, it was fundamental to say what you think, not off the top of your head, considered,
Yes.
and with the ability to back up what you said, and like it or lump it, basically.
Yeah.
But the clients almost always liked it.
Yes. Yeah, they appreciated.
They wanted straight advice, they wanted honest advice, and they didn't want to waste money on lawyers where the lawyers were all going to do was milk the cows and finish up with a no-gain situation.
I mean, one of the ones that I was always inspired by from the early days was, we work ourselves out of a job. So we go in there to do what the client needed, and then make ourselves redundant in a sense, because there'll always be another challenge or another problem that would need our help again.
We hoped we left the clients that we worked with
Better off, yes.
than when we got there. Really guard our secrets, if you like. They were part of the job. If we could transfer some of those to the clients' staff, so much the better.
Yeah.
I think it's fairly fundamental in business that you make your client look good, particularly where it's got a problem. And frequently that means almost always, educating the client in what not to do next time. Now, some people say, but that works you out of a job. We said never. Unless we improve our service and can learn from our experiences, we'll fall by the way as we go along. They'll find a harder problem and we'll be the first phone call, and that's the way it worked.
Absolutely. Who were your competitors in the early days?
Virtually none. We figured we had a niche market. We ran across people like McLaughlin's, who were more in the project management. We ran across Tracy Brunston Hammond, who were programmers, very prominent programmers. We ran across one or two others, but always doing specific issues and never doing what we did. And I think it got to the stage where we were the first phone call. And because of what we provided and because of our focus on quality and outcome, we were always very concerned about the outcome. We thought that at the beginning the client had no problem and no issue to argue about, we'd tell him so straight. But I'd say competitors were never a concern to us.
So Mal, why do you believe you were successful in business?
First of all, we picked the right business. The business we knew we had the competence to carry out successfully. I had a good partner, which helped a lot. Because of that combination, I think the business was able to build on the relationship that, first of all, Graeme and I had. I mean, we got together, first of all, in 1970 at Talbingo, when Graeme came as the expert consultant on rock anchors. And I was the chief engineer for TEAS at that stage, responsible for putting in these rock anchors. Then over the years we kept in touch, and I suppose built up an understanding that we both knew what we were talking about, or roughly, We were honest people, and that's very important in a partner. And we were able to work together and complement each other. Graeme being particularly good at marketing, and we could both do the work as it came up. So I think as a successful business then we had that as the basis. Following on that, we then got the right people around us, and we kept trying to do the jobs we could do well. And we were aiming at the top end of the market. Our fees weren't cheap. The value, hopefully, was first class. So the business built on one, probably Graeme and my relationship to start, and then bringing in people that could really present well and were competent in doing the work. When we were attracting staff, or staff was coming to us to work with us, it's important that they did have experience in heavy construction. This is certainly in the early days. And the first question was always, what have you been doing, what have you done, and how did you go? They needed those skills. They needed to be able to communicate, to talk to the client. We didn't hide the skills that we'd got. In fact, we wanted to transfer those to the client if we could, to the client's staff, and so that in the long term we wouldn't be going back and doing the same job again. We'd be doing the next one, and that was very important. Teaching and coaching were two important parts of the consulting practice, and we like to think that we left the client better than when we got there.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation this morning, and we'll continue to talk, no doubt.
No doubt. Well, thank you.